You're listening to Non-Stop Rock Talk with Tyson Bryden.
Steve, welcome to Non-Stop Rock Talk. It is truly a pleasure to have you on the show today. How are you doing, man?
It's great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on, and hello to everybody out there on the worldwide intraweb.
Yes. I'm going to go right into your latest Tokyo Motor Fist effort entitled Lions, that also features Danger singer Ted Poley, bassist Greg Smith, and drummer Chuck Berge. I hope I pronounced that right.
Berge.
Okay. Right from the opening guitar line on Youngblood, I was sucked in. Like that little intro thing you did at the beginning of that song is so cool, and then kind of goes into the song. I must start off by asking about the collaboration in terms of writing. Do you collaborate with the band, or do you primarily write the material and bring it forth to the band? I'm just kind of curious of that whole process.
Yeah, it's primarily, Tokyo Motor Fist is kind of my baby. I'm the leader, producer, engineer, guitar player, music, art director, lawyer, manager, business manager, all rolled up in one. But
wow.
In essence, what I do is I make a Steve Brown solo record when I start writing, because I don't make demos. I finish everything up to where I program the drums and program, I play the bass and play keyboards and really make it so it's finished. And most of most of the tracks that you hear on the record are the tracks that I record for, like, when I send the songs to Chuck, Ted, and Greg.
Right.
And that's what happened. The only song on this record that was a true collaboration, which is a great story, is the last song on the record, Winner Takes All, which was a song that Chuck Berge wrote probably 38 years ago, back in the 80s.
Wow.
And he, anytime whether it's Trixter or Tokyo Motor Fist or whoever I'm working with, if we're making a record, I always tell everybody, look, everybody knows I'm the guy, the songwriter, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so I always tell everybody, though, if you have something, you have any ideas, if you have a song, bring it in. I'm not opposed to anything, So Chuck sent me the song, and I heard something there. It sounded like his original demo of it was a cassette, and it was really shitty sounding, but it had something. It sounded like it should have been on the Top Gun soundtrack, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Very 80s. But I heard something that there was a gem there that I knew I could polish. And that's exactly what I did. So I added the detune, fair warning, Eddie Van Halen guitar thing to it, the junk chugging away, and heavied it up. And then Ted came in after I had worked it up, and he said, can we change the chorus melodies a little bit? He made some changes. So that song is the first in Tokyo Motor Fist history that's a true collaboration where, Chuck, Ted, and myself are songwriters on that track. So, but everything else is me. I write the songs and get everything up, to basically a finished, like I said, a solo record. And then I give it to the guys, and I tell them, here's the 11 songs, 12 songs we're going to do. Take these songs, learn them the way they are, and then put your own personality into it and make the parts your own, put your own spin on it. Greg comes up with these incredible, beautiful, soulful bass lines. Ted comes in and adds his vocal style. And that's what makes it a true band effort and what makes it a Tokyo Motor Fist record.
Now, the album, as I stated previously, is titled Lions, and it's also a track on the album as well. But I think it's rather an interesting title, and the artwork really coincides with that title and looks amazing. Was there a specific reason as to why this was chosen as the title, though?
Well, it was chosen because of the song. The song is basically the message of the record, and it's a message to the world and to, especially my country, America, right now, because we're in such a fucked up state. That, the song is about, making change and be yourself and trying to influence others to be leaders and take charge of their lives and be lions to your family and your friends. And most of all, as one country and world, that we need to unite to make a change and make the world a better place for us all to live in. And it's a very bold statement, but, I've always written songs that have, kind of social issues, in them, though I'm known for, my biggest hit, Give It To Me Good. We all know what that's about.
Yeah.
But, on the second Trixter record, Road of a Thousand Dreams and Nobody's a Hero touched upon that. So I always like to do that. And it was a very powerful song. And then Lions, again, it's probably my most grandiose song I've ever written in my career. You know, I've been telling everybody it's like my Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, so tip of the hat to, you know, Brian and Freddie and Roger and the Queen guys. But you know, it was one of those things that song was the one, and I was like, man, Lions, that would be a cool title for the record. And I came up with the album, the artwork idea, you know, to have a lion that's in a desolate mountain, because, you know, the first lines of the song are, the world is in chaos, the rats are running the race. You know, if that doesn't say it all for what we're living right now, and I wrote this song a year ago, you know, and it's not like I could have foreseen this was going to be our future a year ago, you know what I mean? Or where we're living right now. So it's very, very fitting for the times. And, you know, again, with the artwork, what I wanted when I told the Andre, the guy who did the artwork after I gave him the direction, I just told him these words. I said, this record and this music, and he agreed because I sent him the record before it was done. You know, I said, this record is important. It's timeless. It's a classic, and the artwork needs to be epic. And I think he achieved all of those words in the artwork, and it fits beautifully with the music, I believe.
Now, when I listen to this, I mean, it's Ted Poley from Danger Danger. I hear that Danger Danger, you know, that feel. It's going to sound like Danger Danger, but I believe. You worked with Bruno Ravel. He helped with the mix. For years, I've loved Bruno's works in terms of his production and mixing. Was working with Bruno on this mix something that you had in mind from the beginning? And what do you think he actually brought to the album in the mix?
Well, Bruno, again, you know, Bruno's a lifelong friend. I've known him since, you know, the Trixter days, Trixter and Danger Danger. You know, they came out a couple years before us, and we've been brothers ever since. He lives in the next town over from me up in northern New Jersey here. So we hang, and I also play in Danger Danger from time to time. So I think Bruno is one of the most talented guys I've ever met as far as an engineer, producer, songwriter, bass player, all around. You know, very much him and I are very much in the same sort of headspace as what we do. As much as we love to play live, we love to be creators in the studio, whether it's engineering and producing other people's stuff or doing our own. So I getting back to why I chose Bruno, I knew when I wrote this record that, and I knew while making it, it was extra special. I think it's light years better than the first record. And I didn't think I could top that, because I kind of thought, I was like, wow, the debut album came out so great. But it was easy because I knew we had something extra special, and I knew I had to go the extra length to get it. And I said to Bruno, I said, I need you on this. And he was all about it, man. He loves this music. And, you know, again, you know, this isn't rocket science. You know, Tokyo Motor Fist, if you take, you know, Trixter, Danger Danger, Rainbow, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, Van Halen, Motley Crue, put it all in a blender, that's what we are. You know, we're a product. And so Bruno, and, you know, I love his work that he did with Danger Danger, of course, but I really love the last two Defiance records. I think he just outdid himself with that. And, you know, dude, listen, with technology, it's getting to where, you know, 20 years ago, we weren't able to make records like we are nowadays in our homes. You know, nowadays with plugins, you know, Steven Slate plugins and all this great recording stuff that we have, you know, that you can put on a laptop, you can make incredible records. So Bruno and I are both in tune with all that, and it was just a perfect marriage. You know, we're doing more work together. We're really enjoyed working with each other. And again, the way it worked was when Bruno was mixing, I would send him a song, he would get it set up. I say, you get it ready to where you think it's good, and then I'll come over and we'll tweak it, and together we will make it great. So he had it like some of the songs 80% there, and it sounded great. Things that if you heard his mix, you probably would say, oh, this sounds great. But the little things, and like, you know, always, as you can imagine with me, first thing I do, turn the guitars up. Turn the guitar solo up, turn my background vocals, because, you know, I do all the background vocals, the Def Leppard, Mutt Lange stacks on all the songs. Turn that up, you know, make it a little bit more rock, And again, that's it, and then the very minor changes, but they make a huge difference. So it was just a pleasure because, like I said, Bruno lives in the next town over, so it was easy to go over there. And we just had a lot of fun, and it's been a long time coming. We've known each other for, decades, but we've never worked together except for playing live gigs. But it was fun to finally work in the studio with him.
That's awesome. I mean, Bruno actually came on my show a few months ago, and I think somehow I don't know if it was during the interview or before the interview. He had actually told me that he had mixed the album with you, and we were talking about old Van Halen, and that's how that came up because he mentioned something about the use of the phaser on the guitar. So he said, "Oh yeah, Steve Brown put a bunch of phaser on it," and I just thought that was so cool. But in terms of the approach on your, in terms of guitar, do you use the same sound with Trixter as you would in Tokyo Motor Fist? Do you mix it up? Do you really branch out more with this than you would with Trixter? Or?
Well, I think, look, it's my style that, the way I make records, I like to build a song up, with a couple different guitar tracks. It really depends on the song because on this record, two songs in particular, Decadence on 10th Street, which is total Van Halen, kind of my bowing down, hailing Edward Van Halen. And, it's got a kind of Van Halen Aerosmith vibe to it. And totally the guitar solo, Bruno and I were totally going for Van Halen 1, 1978, used my EVH Phase 90 on that and just fucking nailed it. But so the other thing about it is that song and the song Sedona is a single guitar track. Basically, it was my playthrough work track that I did, and it just had a magic, and it was a live guitar take, and there's some mistakes in there, but I tried recreating it, and I couldn't do it. And then also when I tried doubling and tripling the guitar tracks to make them really big, it lost that Van Halen thing. And Van Halen is always, when I'm making records, there are two or three things that I always go to. I always go, what would Van Halen do? What would Mutt Lange do? And what would Bon Jovi do? You know what I mean? And so they're the references, because I think you have to have that. You gotta, and as long as if you have a good reference base and you go, all right, this is good. It sounds like that. If it worked for them, it's going to work for me. So it's for me as a guitar player, everything's based around Van Halen. And regarding the sound, I mean, look, that's what I'm going for. Some of the other songs, the song Monster in Me, the second track on the record, that's a song that has 10 guitar tracks on it. It's very much layered, very Def Leppard, and that's what that song was about. So I think my guitar approach on record is geared towards the song and whatever the song calls for. Again, Winner Takes All, that song, that's a single guitar track that, the metal part, with the keyboards under it. So that was really it. And, as far as equipment goes, I use a variety of, things. I keep it simple. I use the EVH amps. I'm a 25-year plus endorser of all Ed Van Halen stuff. He's an old friend of mine and he takes care of me. So I have the new 5150s. I just got this 5150 lunchbox, the little one that I fucking love, and it sounds incredible. So I use that on a bunch of stuff. I have my Headrush pedal board with my signature Headrush guitar presets that I used. And basically all that is when I make my presets, I put in clips of Van Halen songs and I try to match up the tone with that. So my main sound, again, it all reverts guitar-wise, it all reverts back to Van Halen. Vocal-wise, it all reverts back to Mutt Lange and Def Leppard. So there you have it.
It's like I can't miss. Really, when you think about it. I mean, I'm fans of both, big fans, so.
Yeah, and that's what I always tried to do. And it's a shame because the first Trixter record, it's a funny story about it. Yeah, it was really successful and, put us on the map in my career. And probably the reason I'm still talking and doing interviews is because of that. But when we made that record, I was bummed out when we got it because the mix didn't measure up to what I wanted it to be like. And, because when you're in the studio, when, and I learned this and I didn't have the experience, but, you're in this great studio and they have these awesome monitors, these big things. It sounds totally different than when you go listen to it in your car. Or when you look, and it was like, I remember when we were listening to the mixes in the studio, it sounded unfucking believable. And you know why it sounded unfucking believable? Because it was. The speakers were hyped. It was low end out the end. And then we got the record mastered and brought it home. We were all kind of like, wow, this sounds like a garage. And then I later found out that it was like a financial thing, that we couldn't hire somebody to mix the record that we wanted to. And our managers and our record company wanted to keep it like garage sounding. They sort of wanted it to sound that way. But it was kind of a bummer, and interesting enough, once we had success with Give It To Me Good, when I knew 1 in a Million was going to be the second single, I demanded MCA Records we hire Mike Shipley, who was Def Leppard and Mutt Lange's engineer, and we were friends with those guys. I had them mix. I had Mike Shipley mix the 1 in a Million single, and I begged and pleaded with MCA Records to have them remix the whole record, but it would have cost a fortune. But if you listen to the video remix of 1 in a Million, that's the way I wanted our record to sound. But sadly, it just didn't work out that way. But at the end of the day, it worked out pretty well. So I really shouldn't be complaining.
No, that's funny. I didn't realize that. I'm going to have to hunt down that video version now, because I'm kind of curious. Because I love that guitar line in that song anyways. It's just really, it's so infectious, right? It's so good. So that's good to know.
And it's killer. But when you listen to the video mix, and it's a different version of the song. We re-recorded the vocals. Yeah. I added some guitar parts. But again, it's a learning experience. Listen, man, I didn't have the experience that I have now. And certainly right after we finished the record, I completely became obsessed with producing and engineering. That's why I went on to co-produce the second Trixter album with Jimbo Barton, who produced Rush, co-produced Rush and engineered Rush and Queensryche. And I learned very quickly all of those mistakes that I made on the first record were washed away with the second Trixter record.
That's funny. And you mentioned Decadence on 10th Street. That intro actually reminded me something on here as well, like kind of maybe waiting in that line.
Yeah, well, it's funny. PJ said the same thing, and it's one of those things. I think I had that riff for Decadence on 10th Street, the first riff, the down, bound, the very Van Halen thing. It's also really influenced by Amsterdam by Van Halen off the Balance record. It's kind of got that vibe too. But I've probably had that riff, the beginning riff for Decadence on 10th Street, and the riff for Sedona. I've had those riffs for over 25 years. And wow, I finally got to use them.
And then in The Monster and Me, it was cool during the guitar solo that there's cowbell. And I was like, oh, there's cowbell. That's great.
Oh man, always. I'm huge with that, and look, we could go on for days about the joke, but you know what, man? The world needs more cowbell, and I'm fucking gonna bring it to you.
Right. You are so right. Now, on Dream Your Heart Out, you really killed it, man. That guitar line it's got like a Euro sounding thing in some ways, but what captured me is the fact that you play where you need to and allow the song to breathe. You just did that little part at the beginning. It's not overplayed, but when you get the chance to, you come across so well. Is this something subconsciously you're aware of when you're structuring a song?
It is. Look, man, I've been making records for 30 years, and I've worked with some of the greatest engineers and producers around, and, studied. And look, I've been filling guitar with Def Leppard for the last 7-8 years. So the knowledge that I have of making records and building guitar walls, as I like to call it, that wall of sound, if you need it, structuring guitar parts. And the key is, the older we get, we know that saying, less is more, and restraint. And, and that's what I do with my guitar solos, talking about guitar solos. I always try, again, getting back to, like Def Leppard or, Bon Jovi or Van Halen. Eddie's greatest solos are, look, I'm the One. Yeah, it's a great, phenomenal, ripping solo. It's got everything. But, listen to Running with the Devil. That's an awesome solo. It's different. Listen to Photograph, Phil Collins solo on Photograph. Richie Sambora, Living on a Prayer. Memorable, but yet it has a little bit of riff in it, a little bit of rip to where you can hear the fire, a little bit of shred in there. Because look, I love all these new guys that are out. I love the shred guitar players. Andy James, Rob Marcello is one of my favorite guitar players. I think he's probably one of the greatest guitar players on the fucking planet. Him and to me, and I've said this, to me, him and Vinnie Moore are probably the two most underrated guitar players in the world. Because Vinnie Moore is another one. Vinnie's an old friend of mine. When I was a little kid, I discovered Vinnie Moore, and it wasn't until last year that I got to see him with UFO, and I was with Eddie Trunk, and we were watching it. And I said to Eddie Trunk, I'm like, this guy's probably the greatest guitar player I've ever seen live. Like, he just is fucking so good, and Rob Marcello's like that. It's just effortless, and every note they play is sort of right, and so that's the key of it. But Dream Your Heart Out, one cool thing, I love the fact that you caught the Euro thing, because I'd have to research, but I think Dream Your Heart Out is the first song I've ever written and played a harmonic minor scale in.
That it caught me off guard because I've actually never heard you play like that. So that was kind of...
There you go. And, where that comes from is, of course, a little bit of the danger thing, because learning when I had to fill in for Rob on a couple shows, I had to learn like the live versions from Rob's live, playing. And Rob is very much a little too over the top on certain things, with the Yngwie, and the harmonic minor stuff. But it really goes to, a couple years ago, I was playing with Joe Lynn Turner from Rainbow and playing the Ritchie Blackmore songs, and Ritchie was a huge influence on me as a kid, but it wasn't really until I started playing with Joe in 2015, 2016, 2017 that the harmonic minor thing, I was like, fuck man, I've never written anything with harmonic minor. And I came up with that, in the intro, that beginning riff thing, that do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and that was the first time I've ever done that in my career, and I was proud of myself for that, man. It's a really cool part, and I'm glad you picked that up.
I really did. It was a change. It changed the dynamic of the album. You know what I mean? It's like, it's different. It's cool. And then with Blow Your Mind, I think the structure on that is infectious as well. It has that Def Leppard type of anthem vibe, but it really shows depth in the song with the acoustic guitar in the back, which I found really interesting, because if you didn't have that acoustic guitar, maybe it wouldn't sound as much like a mid-tempo ballad, but that really added to that song. And then it was the heavy guitar. If it had heavy guitar, it might be a little bit different. Seems very well calculated. What can you say about that track?
Well, that's another one, again, it's whatever the song calls for. And that was, of course, one of my other favorite bands and dear friends of mine are Tesla. It's kind of got the Tesla vibe. And, Tesla was a huge influence on me. Give It To Me Good was very much inspired by little, Tesla, Little Susie. And, they were like one of the first bands that were really bringing the acoustic and electric thing together. And so that has that. I've always loved that. Trixter, Road of a Thousand Dreams, the acoustic, mixed with the electrics. So it made absolute sense to do that. The song, I think, is a really cool thing because, it's like you think of it as this fun, happy song, but if you listen to the lyrics, it's about a woman who's in a really bad relationship and meeting somebody who is going to take her out of that and show her a new life. And so it's not as happy and poppy as you might think, but I really love it. And I love the guitar solo. I really was going for a thematic, very much Neil Schon, Steve Lukather vibe on that to really do something very, very, epic, but, again, melodic, but, almost has, I think I put a little Don Felder in there too. I put a little nod to Hotel California in the last lick, I think.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's such an epic solo too, so. Now, you mentioned Sedona. It's an interesting track. I mean, for years, I have said that saxophone needs to come back into rock and roll. Being a fan of Springsteen and many of the 80s rock bands, I always felt it added another element to the music. Just a little bit more depth, right? Now
Totally.
the song features a sax solo. How did that come about?
Well, came about easily because Chuck Berge, as you know, has been playing drums for the great Billy Joel for the last 12, 15 years. And the sax player in the band is the legend, a dear friend who I love, Mark Rivera, who's also Ringo Starr's sax player. And so it was like this, man. Sedona, to me, I could have very easily put in a Steve Brown rock guitar, Van Halen type guitar solo. It would have been perfect probably, but I wanted something different. It was kind of like, when I'm making records, much like on the title track Lions and Winner Takes All, where I brought my buddy Michael Hunter in to play real violin and have a real string section. I was thinking about things that I haven't had on my records. And I was like, man, I don't feel like doing the typical run-of-the-mill guitar solo. And I think Sedona is a unique song in itself, lyrically, melodically, the feel, that shuffle feel, has a Toto vibe, Tower of Power. So I'm like, fuck, man, let's get Mark to play. And so I called Chuck and see if we can get Mark Rivera to come in. Played him my work track of it because Ted hadn't even done his vocals, and I sent him my vocal, and he was like, dude, this is awesome. I'm all over it. He came over, we spent a day together, and he just knocked it out of the park. And again, it takes the song to a different place. And it gives you that, Sedona, it gives you that feel-good summertime, beautiful, whether you're at the beach, you're in the mountains, because that's kind of what the song Sedona is about. I kind of use the David Lee Roth school of writing on this, to where it was like what Dave did with Panama or what he did with Yankee Rose, to where you're not sure if he's talking about a girl, a place, a car, a city, and so that's total the thing, total the inspiration there. And it just, again, it goes back to when you're making records for 30 years, you want to try to keep it exciting and do things that you've never done before. And again, I had never recorded a sax player in my studio. So, it was just great. And I brought my other friend in, this guy, Frosty Lawson, who lives in the next town over from me. He was actually my daughter's music school teacher, and he's probably one of the most talented guys. He did all the horn stabs, like the Get the Funk Out Extreme, the stuff that's in the chorus, the Aerosmith type things. He did that and put the B3 on it. So it really has, that, like I said, that if you took like Aerosmith, Van Halen, and Toto and mashed it all together, that's Sedona, I think.
It's just, there's a lot of stuff where on this album that people are not doing anymore. Just like in the 80s, it was, maybe they say things were pigeonholed in the 80s, but in some terms, I don't think that, because, people weren't afraid to use sax. And there were hard rock hair bands, whatever you want to call them, that were pushing the envelope a little bit and using different instrumentation and whatnot. So that was really good to hear.
Thanks, man. I'm glad, you definitely did your homework, and I appreciate you noticing all these, these cool things about the record, because that's exactly what it is. And most of all, Tyson, you got to know this from me and from the guys, that how much we care and how much we love this. This isn't, and we all know Frontiers with all the so-called super groups, these bands that they put together, this is a real band. This is not just some project. We play live, we rehearse, we rehearse in my studio and Greg's studio. We play gigs, we just got off the Monsters of Rock cruise. So it is a real band. And the difference is, this isn't a cash grab for any of us, because, we're not making that much money making these records, if any. So this is because we love the music. We love each other playing together. We love the band. And most of all, we want to give our best. So it's always about that. Just like what I said, I could have easily put down a guitar solo. That would have been probably great, but it's not the same. And just like what you said about the cowbell, man, I think rock and roll needs more saxophone. And just like the rock and roll needs more cowbell. So
that's so awesome. Now, I wanted to ask you one thing about new Audio Machine. One of the tracks I really loved on that album was Walk with a Stranger. And I'm not Walk with a Stranger. I'm not sure if a lot of people realize that was actually written by Dave Sabo and Rachel Bolan, and it can actually be found on YouTube as a Skid Row demo. How was it that it found its way onto that album?
Well, it goes back to 1987, 1986, 87, 88, when I met, we met Snake and Rachel. I met them through John Bon Jovi. John was the first guy who was interested in Trixter back in 1986 before Slippery When Wet took off. He's always been a big supporter of us, so he introduced me to Snake and Rachel and I and Scotty. We hit up a friendship, a lifelong friendship that still exists to this day. So when they got signed, my favorite song, because Trixter, we played gigs with Skid Row before Sebastian was in the band, when they had the original singer, Matt Fallon. And so I always loved that song. It was my favorite song, of course, because it was much more poppy, much more up my alley. It was like Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, but, gritty and, shittier, not as pretty. It had an edge. But I was like, man, when they got their deal, Snake was like, yeah, we're not doing that song. And I was like, well, can we have it? And he's like, fuck yeah, have it. So we were playing, Trixter was playing Walk with a Stranger back in 1988, I think we started, or even 87, but I think it was 88 we started playing that. I think there's actually footage of us on YouTube of us playing that song. And so fast forward to 2011 when we were working on the new Audio Machine record, I was always trying to bring back songs and riffs that I didn't use. And that was one of them that came up. So I said to the guys, I said, we got to change the key because it was way higher. It was in the key of A originally, the way the Skids and the way we did it. And it was vocals were super high and just not pleasant sounding anymore. So I dropped the key down, transposed it to E, and worked up a version of it. And I said, when we got done with it, I sent the finished, mastered mix to Snake and Rachel, and they both were like, wow, I finally like that song.
Wow.
So it was really, really cool. And I really love the guitar solo I did on that one. It was just one of those good days where all the notes seemed to hit the right chord, if you know what I mean.
And you might find this funny, but that may be my favorite Trixter album. I love it.
Oh, you know what, man? A lot of people say that and Human Era, and really the coolest, and I appreciate that so much. And just so you know, in November, I think, I'm going to be re-releasing New Audio Machine and Human Era because I got the rights back. So there's going to be a new remastered version with bonus tracks and stuff coming out in October, November. I think it's only going to be digital only, but there's going to be some cool extras on there. But how cool is that here we are, Trixter. We made, in my opinion, New Audio Machine and Human Era. We made two records 20 years later that were, to me, equally as good, if not better, than our first two albums.
That's amazing, man.
And again, it goes back to what I said before. For me, that's how much I care. I'm not going to half-ass anything. I'm not going to do, I know guys that make records for Frontiers, man. They just go, man, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm only working X amount they have it figured out to the amount of hours they're going to work on the record. And they say, fuck it, I'm giving them whatever they get. It's like, man, and I go, that's fucked up. I go, how could you do that? And I go, well, and then I look at them and I go, oh, that's why your record sounds like shit. And that's why you're playing to fucking 20 people,
That's right. Are you guys slated to be at M3 this year, Tokyo Motor Fest? Did I see that?
No, we're not. Okay. And I'm bummed about it, actually. But no, we never got an offer. And what's interesting is that the promoter, Eric Baker, is a dear friend. He used to work for MCA Records. He was our local rep in New England for back in the Trixter days. I mean, we met him on our first tour, first time we ever played Boston. But yeah, it just didn't work out. I mean, I don't think M3 is even going to happen this year. So
like it. I mean, we're getting close, right? I mean, they already postponed it. It's supposed to be Labor Day weekend, so it doesn't. We're only 2 months away, right? It's crazy.
Yep.
Well, Steve, I've taken up enough of your time. I really want to thank you for speaking with me today. I wish you the best of luck on this release, and I really think the hard rock melodic fans are going to enjoy this album.
Well, I appreciate that, Tyson, and to everybody out there, give it a listen, turn it up. I think you're going to be happy. And just like what I said in the press release, I think Lions is the feel-good, uplifting rock record that everybody in the world needs right now. I think it'll make everybody's day a lot better by listening to this record.
Okay, right on. Okay,
Cheers, brother.
Man.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.